What we'll do today is we're going to have a look at ways you can work smarter and faster with less admin in your Outlook. As we know, we're all busy, we get a lot of emails, and we often lose a little bit of track sometimes. So we're going to explore how Copilot can automate repetitive tasks, summarize long email threads, coordinate your meetings, and even help you write with the right tone so that you can focus on what really matters in your business. So make sure you're all set. I'm going to introduce to you my expert who's on the line, and if you've been following along with our workshops all year, you'll well know Aidan Clifford. So he's a manager of Microsoft Alliances for AusPac region at Pax8. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Aidan.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sarah. Great to be back for the workshop today, and really appreciate everyone taking the time out of their day. I see we've got a really great attendance. So for those of you who are new, my name is Aidan Clifford, the manager for Microsoft Alliances here at Pax8. So working really closely with the KMT team. On the Copilot side of things at the moment, we've had some really great workshops over the past few months, but across their Microsoft ecosystem. So probably a lot of the interactions you have with the team, we work closely with them on the back end to make sure we can get everything done and the best return on your investment with your Microsoft technology. I will take control and move to the agenda for today. So for those of you who haven't been able to join one of these sessions before, for those of you who've come back, welcome back. Thanks very much for taking the time once again. But I will just take a bit of time at the start. We won't go through too many slides, but I do just want to make sure we just have a really solid baseline of where we can start to grow and understand where these demos will start to come in handy from the Copilot perspective. So I'll go through the Copilot for Microsoft 365 opportunity. If you're not currently using Copilot, you or your coworkers are probably using an AI solution of some sort. So I'll just sort of talk through where we see the Copilot opportunity being most unique and probably most useful and compliant from a working scenario. I'll then focus in on Copilot in Outlook for today. So we have had a Copilot in Outlook session previously. I will touch on a few sort of pieces that we did in that previous workshop, just to kind of make sure we've got a chance to answer any questions for anyone who's joining for the first time or wasn't able to make that session. But I'll also be looking at a few scenarios, not just in Outlook, but how it relates to how you can increase your productivity when it comes to basically sending your emails, responding to emails, interacting with the pile of work that we get through our Teams meetings and our emails and our messages all at once. So how can we cut through that noise and help Copilot do some of the heavy lifting for us? And the best way we'll do that is through the demos at the end there. So I'll get probably through them, and the vast majority of the session will be there. As Sarah mentioned, please feel free to put any questions into the Q&A. Want to make sure this is as interactive as possible because we know that from my personal experience using Copilot, it's the incremental wins that you get along the way. It's taking out these individual blockers that once you put all of this progress together over a couple of months and you look how far you've come, you realise that it's very difficult to work without this technology at a great benefit in the long run as well. So just to kind of kick off, there is some really good statistics coming through from the Microsoft side of things just around how impactful generative AI, being the umbrella term for tools like Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever your flavor, it's all coming underneath that umbrella of generative AI. It's pretty much here. It's in the SMB space. It's in the corporate space. The vast majority of users are already starting to use it in a work setting, and Microsoft is seeing that 75% of people are already using AI at work. And the vast majority of those users are bringing their own AI tools to work as well. So it means that business owners, managers may not have visibility to a lot of the AI usage in their organizations. This can have some implications from a data security and governance perspective. So please reach out to the KMT team to understand any of those considerations there as well. Because worst case scenario, you want to make sure that there's a tool that the organization understands and you understand any of the implications, not only for data privacy, but just for the output of the work is what people are putting into potentially the public sphere and things that you want to make sure there's some checks and balances along the way. There are some pretty cool updates, which I'll share in a few moments, which relates directly to this. So I'll go through to that in a moment. But also on this perspective, if we're thinking particularly through the sort of the prism of email, through the prism of Outlook, we are seeing that a lot of people are using AI, but also the same amount of people, give or take, are also struggling to get through the pace of their volume of work at the moment, with email overload being a really consistent theme. 85% of people are reading their emails in under 15 seconds, probably no matter how long they are. And the vast majority of people are receiving about 4 emails for every 1 email that they're sending. So that ratio is a little bit out of whack, whether it's we're getting sent emails or whether we're just unable to respond to them effectively. There's probably a bit of balance in there that we can sort of work through. So if we think about these core concepts of people are starting to use AI, whether it's condoned by the business or not, or we have that visibility or not, It's a conversation we probably need to have proactively. And then we have this problem statement of people having a really big digital debt in the workplace of so many contacts coming through. They need some tooling to help respond through to these. So we'll go through some of the solutions to effectively doing that today. If we're thinking about some of the Copilot updates, so where I was sort of leading to the discussion around the free version of Copilot, though, is there have been some updates in the past week or so where Microsoft is starting to release some of the previously gated features into the free version of Copilot. So if we're thinking about where most people would usually consider their AI usage, it was either like ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini, the ones in the top right-hand corner of their browser, the one that's kind of just that chat experience working through data on the internet. And it's kind of like the newer version of how you would traditionally do Google searches and use AI in that fashion. Where we're starting to see updates from Copilot, though, is you now have these chat features tied directly into some of the apps for free. So you will get some of the limited versions through Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook and OneNote. So this is where you don't necessarily get the same rich experience across your entire data ecosystem. It doesn't tie into your Teams meetings, for example, and it doesn't have some of the advanced features here, but you don't need to drop and drag files in order to get access to the Copilot experience at a base level anymore. So it can really speed up that way that users can use AI and link together the dots as to how they can think about, okay, if I'm drafting something, I'm summarizing something, I don't need to think outside of the area that I'm used to working in. You can just go directly into Word or into PowerPoint to get that benefit there. So a lot of opportunity, which we'll be unpacking over the next few months as more roles out there, which is really great. They're also adding more enhanced features. So you can start to link in more documents. They're raising the bar on how much compute power is going into these solutions as well. If you did see a limitation there, we're seeing that start to be unlocked pretty effectively, which is awesome. But it also means that Microsoft is putting more pressure on themselves to add more and more capability into the paid version of Microsoft 365 Copilot, which we love to see as well. So we're seeing the release of researcher and analyst agents. Agents is becoming a really popular theme. So the customization of how we can get Copilot to interact with our data, which does present some really great opportunities for automation and making sure you can increase the productivity outside of that one-to-one usage. We're really excited to see where this is starting to move as well. So if free users are getting even more and the paid users are getting even more on top of that, then I think it's a pretty good ecosystem to tap into. If we're thinking mostly about the session for today, though, if we're thinking directly for Copilot in Outlook, the things that we'll be looking to focus on mostly is how do we summarize lots of information, make it really digestible at speed, and how can we interact with it at speed as well. So summarizing long email threads, attachments within those email threads, suggesting action items, replies, and follow-ups to do with all of these different interactions means that we can sort of bring together a wealth of information that historically would have to mine through line by line. We've got to have a trusty friend in Copilot to help do that for us. When it comes to replying, though, we can start to utilize the engines to speak in our own writing style. There are some updates that I'll share with us today to automate some of that writing style as well. So we don't need to put it in every single prompt, which can be time consuming. We can create baseline ways. So I could use your tone of voice and your writing style to make sure you can respond even more quickly and even more authentically as well. We want to make sure it does sound like us and interacts in a way that we can best express ourselves using the technology too. Some of the things which you could also do in Outlook, I'm not going to be able to show too many of these today, but the horizon is becoming much more bright when it comes to speeding up tasks, such as creating your automatic replies within the chatbot, being able to create rules within your mailbox, and be able to book meetings at scale, like asking for Copilot to find a 30-minute window that Sarah's free on Friday, that I'm also free as well, putting in meetings like that automatically. Some really handy tools, but I will be focusing mostly on the drafting components of this today. But any questions, please send them through. And just finally, before I head over to the demo side of the session today, I just wanted to come back to the prompt ingredients. So if you've been part of these sessions before, I do want to remind everyone that these are really important when we're trying to get the best information out of our Copilot prompts the first time. We don't have to respond back as too many times. We find that sometimes if you're responding to your AI engine, no, it doesn't matter which one, it does become a little bit less sort of concise the more interactions that we're having there. There's more opportunity for hallucinations to come into those responses from AI. So we want to make sure that it's as robust and as close to what we want the first time. It also saves a lot of time by doing this. The guidance we receive from Microsoft is what they call their prompt ingredients. So how do we make sure that Copilot knows about the goal that we want to achieve from the prompt today? What is the context? Why do we need it? And who is involved? What is the source of information, which is really important, limiting down the scope of where Copilot is going to be fishing for information to interact with. And then also, what are the expectations? How do we want this to read? How do we want it to represent itself at the end of the day? Because then we don't need to go back, make any adjustments on the fly, or need to sort of have repeat interactions there as well. So if we look at the example on the screen, generate 3 to 5 bullet points that are very specific about a particular client and a particular brand campaign, focusing on emails and Teams chat since June. So adding in those dates is really important. And then please use simple language so I can get up to speed quickly. So making sure it doesn't need to be a formal long-winded answer, just really concise, really easy to understand to make sure we can get back as quickly as possible. But without further ado, I'll go over to my Microsoft 365 environment. I'll just stop sharing my screen for one moment and I'll get started working through some demos. Understand. So one of the things that I hopefully will display today is to get the best out of our Outlook experience, it doesn't even necessarily have to take place in Outlook, because if we're thinking about replying and drafting at scale, a lot of it can be done within Teams if we're summarizing Teams meetings, which I'll show, or we can use it in the M365 chat version and then just bring that across. So obviously we want to make sure it's as native to the app experience as possible, but if we think about the task at hand, there's probably quite a few different ways to get the outcome that we want to without compromising the speed at which we want it to occur.
That's a great point. Yeah.
So what I want to do just at the start here is just kind of show the scale at which we can look across multiple emails, so we can start to summarize emails from a sender across a period of time. So what I can do that, I can either do that in Outlook, but to kind of go through to Monica's point, we can do this in M365 chat as well. So if I go through to my M365 Copilot app, as you can see, I've got a paid version of the application. So I've got the option to switch between work and web. Web would mean that all of the interactions I do would take place online, so just be using the internet as the source of truth. If I've got the work function on here, it just means that I'm able to use both the internet and my work data, so my M365 environment, to get sources of truth here. If we're thinking about what I was mentioning earlier about the data considerations as well, this is where you can start to think, maybe you just want to make sure employees only have access to the information that they need to have access to. Because if we've got the ability to search across the entire environment, then obviously that increases the chance of getting access to information that I may not necessarily have access to. But we've got a pretty good, robust policy here at PAX8, so hopefully I can put that on display today. What I want to put in just to kind of help show listing and summarizing emails, though, is I get a pretty handy newsletter from a Microsoft MVP called CIA Ops. So I want to just go through and see all of the emails I get from him weekly, but I wanted to make sure I list and summarize all these emails from the past 2 months. So I'll just go through it. I'll put that into Copilot. And so as we can see, we're not currently in Outlook, but we're going to start interacting with the data within Outlook from the emails that we've been receiving. And now we can start to see that it's come through as far as all of the different emails that I've got. I've got footnotes as far as the emails I've received, but I've also got little summaries in here. It's a bit long-winded, probably for my liking, to kind of get up to speed quickly. But I've got 4 emails. I think he sends them through fortnightly, so that would make sense if I'm getting 4 across those 2 months here. I've got a summary, but what I want to do is say, please summarize more concisely, if I can spell, using a table format as well. So I just want to kind of display that we're interacting with our emails, we're summarizing them, but you can start to build on top of this in a way that is going to become a bit more meaningful at scale for us. So if you've got a big team, for example, you're trying to consolidate down for a particular project or a particular customer scenario where you've had multiple interactions, these are some of the tags that you can start to put through to create these tables and start to get up to speed more quickly, understand how you can start to prioritize it. And there's also features in here where you can start to copy and paste these or export them to another tool, which we can probably do. I think we did last time through Pages. You can able to start to interact with this information readily as well. So I just wanted to kind of show a bit of that, a bit of the interactions that I would have there. The next thing I want to do, which would get us ready for summarizing large documents. So say, for example, I work in the Microsoft ecosystem day to day. I might switch across to my web application for this one. What I want to do is I want to create an email summarizing one of the really big, ugly Microsoft licensing guides that I have to go through every day, so I can make sure I can answer KMT's questions on time when everyone on the call needs to reach out with licensing guidance. But what I want to do is, this might take a minute to upload. I want to attach this licensing guide. This is something you can do with the free version of Outlook as well. I'll say, please write an email through to the team, an email for the sales team, summarizing the key changes from this document. And also mention that we'll have a meeting on Friday to discuss. I just wanted to show now also with this, you'll be able to do this natively within Word or within Outlook from the free version, but I just wanted to show through the M365 app, because this is a really effective way to get the most out of the data across your entire estate, or just kind of the fundamentals of Copilot as well. But this licensing guide, I didn't open it up. It's about 100 pages long, full of all of the lovely things that Dynamics is bringing to the market this financial year or last financial year. And just going through here, we can see what this email has written for us. It's given us a key subject, given us a bit of a summary at the start. I actually verified a few of these earlier, so it's done a pretty good job of quite a few of the changes that have come through this version of the licensing guide. So pretty nicely formatted, just with some subheadings as well. And let's double check. Next steps, we'll have a team meeting on Friday to discuss the changes in detail, answer questions, and align to our go-to-market messaging. So it's even personalized it from my identity in the Pax8 ecosystem. So really handy for me to be able to just copy and paste this across to Outlook. You can also do this within the chat version within Outlook as well. I just like to show this one because I see less adoption of the M365 chat app, and there's a huge way to expand across both Outlook and the other apps within here as well. So hopefully that's a handy way to show how to utilize this to then start drafting some emails. But I'll just be one moment and I'll go across to Outlook itself. We can have a bit of a look at it within the app experience.
Yeah, I think that is handy. I often will sort of have that open on one screen and use it at different times, just depending on what I'm doing. So that would really help Monica, for example, as an option.
Awesome. So one moment. Cool. So I've got so if I'm going across to Outlook itself, I've got a bit of an email thread where I conscripted one of my team members this morning to start sending me through some dummy emails. So I've got an email conversation that I had with Barath this morning about our Copilot rollout meeting that we're planning that's coming up. So I've got an email thread here. It's got about 5 or 6 different interactions here between Barath and myself. Really just looking at, I'll start at the bottom to give it a bit of a better context. So we've got a project Copilot, very creatively named by me. I want to go through a quick thread to gather your thoughts on key actions, considerations, and timings about the meeting. Barath then comes back with some technical considerations he wants to throw in the mix. I then go back that I want to go through some of the feedback that we want to gather from this, just from a high level. Then get some project timings to add some bit more tangibility as to where we're going to go with this. And then I say, fantastic, I want to validate the timeline. Sarah, I've involved you in this one as well. So you're part of the meeting on this one now. We also want to confirm participants and adopt on tactics, etc. So this is obviously a pretty long thread. We don't want to go through this every time. If you're working in support or services, these threads can be hundreds and hundreds of threads long. It would take a very long time to get up to speed with. There is an automated function within Outlook to summarize this meeting with Copilot. Hopefully it starts to speed up a little bit more. I'll just X out of that one and I'll just give that another go. Awesome. So that's a bit more like it.
Oh, wow.
So we've usually it is a bit more instantaneous like that one, but we're always rolling the dice with live demos here today. So I've initiated a thread to gather ideas about Project Copilot, aligning meeting, focusing on post-meeting actions, adoption considerations, and times and milestones. It's got Barath highlighted technical priorities. That sounds about right. Also added change management actions within here. So we can really see how it's gone through. It's summarized at speed, all of these different interactions here. It's really started to gather from a high level of information, but it has, in my opinion, it's gathered it quite effectively as well. There isn't too much that I can see from scrolling through here that it's actually missed out on as far as what I need to get up to speed. I know that's one of the considerations when people are using Copilot, especially within emails. You don't want to miss any of that detail. Whilst I would always recommend verifying if something is particularly important to not miss out on, there is a pretty good level of accuracy that I've found within these summaries at the top of the page. And if you do have any questions that you want to verify, either just scrolling through and verifying, or you can make more personalized interactions through the Copilot app, or just through the Outlook app in order to ask specific questions about different timelines or different follow-up dates or different comments that have been made that you want to draw attention to. So this is where it comes in pretty handy. If I wanted to reply back to Barath on this one, we can go through and just click on draft. And then we can got our trusty Copilot app here. So I can just say, please write a quick Barath. This sounds great. Mention any follow-up items for myself and that we will connect on Friday to discuss. 10 a.m. So we can put that through, just a pretty generic sort of prompt to just start drafting through that email. what we can do is we can keep it, we can discard it. I've got some good answers if you're thinking that the greeting and the structure looks a little bit silly. So I'll go through that in a moment just to show you how we can start to adjust this at scale, because it wouldn't be usually that I'd say hello there when I'd be starting my emails for those Star Wars
I know
fans.
it's sort of a bit of a red flag when people are reading them. Hey, Aidan, do you mind if I pause you just for a second? It's going to take us a little bit back to when you summarised your big 100-page document, but a question from Akskasha. I'm sorry if that's bad pronunciation of your name, but wanted to know what might be the percentage accuracy for such long documents that you're reviewing via AI. Is there a way to check the accuracy of the summary? Is there a way to check? I don't know how you'd respond to that question. I'm just going to throw to you with that one.
Yeah, I would say I don't have like a quantitative answer as far as percentage of accuracy for that one. But what I would say is with a large document, Copilot's going to start making decisions and prioritizing in lieu of specific instructions to do so. So if you had a 100-page document, you may want to think about the prompt that you want to put together, going back to the ingredients that we mentioned, and start to add in some parameters. So say, for example, within Dynamics, there's a certain license called Business Central. If I only wanted it to be about Business Central, I would want to make sure that that wasn't potentially missed out on. If Copilot is making some priority decisions, I'd put that specifically in there, or say I want to make sure it's creating dot points specifically around this from a certain date range, or anything else I can qualify in there. So whilst I don't have a yes or like a red light, green light answer as far as that summary effectiveness, usually if you use it a few times, you can start to verify that it is pretty close to the mark. But if you want it to be about a specific item within a long form document, I'd definitely go through and do that. We had a demo that I think we did at the start of this series, which was going through the annual leave policy from that Victorian government website. And that was about 100 pages long as well, a whole bunch of different topics that weren't relevant, but we just put in, we wanted to talk about annual leave from that one. And so it scoured out and it started ignoring the things that were irrelevant from that. So the more we can add those parameters, the closer we'll be the first time.
I guess if we're looking at the accuracy of the summary, so it's looking in that document only specifically. So when you're asking it to review that document, you know that the information is coming out and it's not going to misconstrue the main content, I suppose. And then, yes, as you say, you can hone in and ask it for it to particularly focus in more detail on certain topics if that's more important or relevant to the further discussions or emails that you're about to write. So, yeah, so that might give you some confidence, but I think that should address the question from our participant there. Thank you, Aidan.
No worries. And yeah, so it is always about that grounding, as you said, Sarah. So if you wanted to look outside the boundaries of just that specific document, you can ask it to look online, or you can add another document in there, but just be specific about which area you want it to tap into. If you're using Copilot for M365 across multiple data sources, you will get footnotes as to where they get that information from. So whether it's timings within team meetings or specific emails as well. So if you are worried about if it is highly sensitive or a high value scenario using it at work, you can go through and verify that just to double check, just the same way that you double check any other work that would be coming through from a coworker.
Great.
Awesome. So within this one, so I've gone through, I've created this draft. It came up with a bit of a different formatting, but there is a prescriptive way of why this is, which I'll show in a few moments. But if we didn't like the sound of it, so say, for example, we don't like the just the tone of voice of this, we can then go through highlight and get a bit more specific with Copilot. So I'll just show that again if we want to do it quickly. Highlighting a certain area within the email, we've got our little Copilot icon that pops up next to where we've highlighted. We can then click on that and just say auto rewrite. If we don't have any major preferences, we want to let Copilot do the heavy lifting. We can make it shorter, make it longer, and we can change the tone into more direct, more casual, formal, and like a poem, which I'm not too sure how often is used in a work setting, but it's always good to show what it can do. I might just go for make it shorter, just to see what it'll come up with. So I need to validate Sarah's proposed timeline, confirm Copilot participants, and success criteria. So even though it's pretty concise and to the point, I actually prefer that from the dot points within this case. We can just go replace that one, scroll up, and that's popped that in there. So it's adjusted that if we didn't prefer what that one was. If we don't like the greeting as well, obviously it's probably pretty quick to type that, but we can just give it an auto rewrite and we'll come up with something for us pretty quickly. Kept high there, so it's pretty close, but did go through and make a bit of a change. So I'll go through and I'll delete that because this is just hopefully a really good way to see we've gone from our 4 or 5 emails, we summarized them into one paragraph to read rather than 5 or 6, and we've been able to reply back using the details within that email thread at speed as well. I'll just be one moment and I'll just go across to my Outlook here. So now I've got a draft here that I'm sending through to Barath. I'll save his inbox the trouble. I'll delete that one for the time being. But as you can see, we're in my inbox. I'm just in drafts because this is actually my email inbox as well. So if I'm using things a little bit differently, it's because we're in the live environment over here. If we want to use Copilot, we can use the app up in the top right-hand corner of the browser. That's the general version. Or if we want to use Copilot within the app, we've got it right here up the top right-hand corner as well. If we click on this drop-down menu, we've got chat, which will be very similar to your chat experience across other apps, but it's just making sure you can access it within Outlook. We can draft straight away. We can look to prioritize our inbox. I won't do that today. I do find that you probably want to add some parameters into how you're prioritizing, because otherwise Copilot just uses its best sense to do things, but inboxes can be quite complex. But what I do want to show today is the new one around Copilot settings within Outlook, which came out a little while ago. So firstly, you've got the ability to turn Copilot on and off. Pretty self-explanatory if you don't want to use it, or if you do want to use it. If you do want to use it, it's not there. Make sure you check the settings and turn that on. But where things get quite interesting is within draft instructions. I think we had some questions in some of the previous workshops about personalizing our drafts. So we don't need to put this into every prompt that we're working with, because typing in specific instructions can be a bit tiresome, especially if you're looking to save time. Where you can start to see that my output from the last email was a little bit odd, or was a little bit funny, is because I've put in some specific instructions that I want Copilot to follow every time it's creating an email draft for me. So in this case, I said use the greeting hello there for the Obi-Wan Kenobi fans out there. I've also got make sure all the emails are short and to the point, and always include dot points where relevant. And then I think one of the other questions we had in another workshop was make sure to use Australian English spelling instead of US spelling, because people are getting frustrated having to change the Z's to S's all the time.
Yes, that's brilliant. So, I'm going to use that one. This is new. Great.
Yeah, so this is new. Let's put it to the test. So I'll roll the dice on this one. It was working earlier. So I'll go create a new email. We'll draft with Copilot. I'll just get the way that I wanted to test this out. So let's try and just get some of the usual suspects that we need to change over into Australian spellings in there. So if we draft an email about our business's organisational changes and realised value for marketing campaigns, hopefully we get a couple of potential Zs in there. Let's draft this email and see what we come up with. Awesome. So first of all, we can see that custom greeting is in there. Obviously, we can change it to something a bit more professional if we wish. If you remember, we do have those dot points that are always being added through as a sort of structural way this email wants to be written. And then we can see organisational. We've got no Zs in there at all. So we've got organisational with an S. I'm trying to skim through a few other ones, and I can only see the Australian spellings if I can see. Let me know if you're playing along at home if there are any Zs in there that we need to correct, but I think it's done a pretty good job following those instructions. It does follow the instructions pretty robustly as well, so I probably will go through after this and switch off that greeting and that dot point structure, but it can be quite handy as far as just making sure if there is a certain way you want to speak to your audience and there's a certain structure, you can add that in every time, but I would add in that US spelling change each time as well.
Yeah, that's a good one.
The other way I'll sort of test that out just to kind of show that feature home is I'll go through and I'll draft another one. I'll just say, please list 10 words that I can use with Australian spelling instead of US spelling, just to kind of really try and hopefully make it a bit more obvious. And once again, it's maintained that grading structure. It's gone through and it's put through all of the different words that it would potentially come through with US spelling on. It's even given us the US spelling as well for reference, but you can see it's put it into that dot point format as well. So it's really sort of followed the instructions quite effectively. I know that was some of the feedback from the early days of using Copilot, is that the instructions may not have fit directly into the output, but these are a lot of the improvements that we're seeing time and time again, which is awesome to help with the actual usability and time saving that we'd like to see. Awesome. So I'll just delete that one for us. I'll go through and one of the things that I do want to sort of showcase as well is once again, it's getting outside of the Outlook experience, but it's tying directly into how we can start to utilize the greater M365 experience to increase our speed to follow up emails. And that's in this scenario, it's through Teams. So I created a test meeting this morning. So as you can see, the top left-hand corner, it's called Test Meeting, where I went through and spoke about a Copilot business plan and that I'm trying to roll out here in my fictional team that I created this morning. So Tom, Sarah, and Tim, they've all got some work to do, but we spoke about some of the overview and business rationale what we want to do in this team. I can go through. You can obviously see I went on a bit of a monologue this morning just to get this information across. There's quite a lot of text that I want to work through in order to then turn that productivity into something useful and then get that to the next step of working with the team, which I want to do via email afterwards. Where Copilot starts to play quite handily, and it starts to make sure we can start to automate or at least speed up a lot of these processes, is firstly we get the AI summary as part of this. So this is Copilot without pressing any buttons, coming up with the information within that meeting. So we can start to see where the meeting notes are starting to be summarized and categorized. We can then go through, look at these drop-down menus and start to see how this is going to relate to the information we had in the meeting. It's obviously pretty long form, but it is meaningful as far as the information we want to get through. We also have our follow-up tasks down the bottom, and we have people assigned to them that we want to follow up with here. So I think it's a pretty prime scenario. If I think about traditionally, you're holding meetings, if these meetings aren't recorded using AI and we don't have the ability to then adjust that into an email straight away, it can take quite a lot of time, and quite a lot of information from these meetings can be lost as far as who owns what meetings. We need some pretty keen people within the business to make sure we capture all that stuff, to make sure we get it for the next meeting and keep everyone accountable. Where we can go through in Copilot, so there's quite a few different ways you can do this through the Copilot app, through Teams itself. You'll be able to do it in Outlook. I was just having a bit of problems doing it earlier, so we'll just do it in Teams today. Is what I want to do is just bring across and turn the information from this meeting into an email that I can send through to the team. How I want to do that is I want to draft an email for follow-up to this meeting. I want to include dot point list of required actions with owners and due dates. So just a pretty simple request. I can say once again, please add that there will be a follow-up meeting for all team members, because these are the incremental things that we can start to add into our prompts, just to make sure that we don't need to then add it in manually later on. If we put this through just as a prompt in Teams, we can start to see it starts to build that out for us pretty readily. So we've got our subject line that it's created for us. We've then got our team message going through here. It's got our due date that was established within the call transcript as well. And it's also mentioned that we've got a follow-up meeting on Friday to discuss as well. We've listed out the items and action owners within here. For the question earlier, we can also see that this is referring through to a specific time within that Teams meeting as well. If you want to verify any of the information from the transcript, which I do find is very handy, then all we have to do is just copy this across, and then we can go through to our Copilot experience once again in Outlook if we want to start redrafting or changing how this reads, etc. So we've saved hopefully quite a bit of time. If we think about how long it would usually take to get from a Teams meeting, if we're taking those notes manually for starters, it's going to be a lot of information is going to be lost. It's going to take a lot of time for the person doing the minutes to create those minutes and send them through. And then if we're looking to then readjust that information into a email format that we can then send out to our team, this is quite a few stages and a lot of time consumption and a lot of potential loss of productivity and information before you're getting from A to B. So this is where it's come through quite handily. We can obviously do a bit of work just neatening this up, which we can work with Copilot on. I might go back to Teams actually and just say, please restructure as a table. See if it's going to be a way that we could potentially make it a bit more consumable for usage within the next email. Awesome. So what we can do is see just with one simple prompt, which you can probably learn for next time to then bring that in. We can then neaten that up in quite a nice way, where we can then move that across, delete back the old one, paste that in. And whilst it is a table within Outlook, so it has have limitations as how it copies through versus some of the ways that you see it within OneNote or within Loop or the other apps. These will be updated over time, but it is still pretty readable and pretty usable. And I'm pretty sure that we can start to then interact with it from there too. As I was mentioning previously, we could then go through, if we don't like the look of that draft from the top here, once we've got that in Outlook, we can then start to highlight different areas, click on our Copilot symbol, and then go through, do an auto rewrite as we did previously. We can even get coaching. We can click on the coaching button to see if we've got any recommendations as to how to adjust the tone of voice from how we're speaking to our team. And this is where it starts to get a bit more qualitative based on some of the research that we get from Microsoft, such as, thank you, add closing sentences like, thank you for your time and commitment, looking forward to continue work together, appreciate everyone's contributions. It also starts to detect different reading sentiments and stuff like that. If you are receiving a lot of emails and you want to just sort of just get a sense check on some of the emails that are coming through from the team or from your manager, and just see if there's anything sort of between the lines you need to be aware of. Microsoft has got some sort of insights into how that works from a lot of its work, even within Viva and the learning suite within M365. And there's probably a few ways on clarity. Since it's written by Copilot, the clarity is probably already within there. But if you are just kind of typing a long form email yourself and you want to get a second set of eyes on it, these are really handy tools to just make sure that you can go through, either apply all suggestions. I'll probably dismiss it as I was pretty happy with the output the first time. But these are just some of the ways that we can then to start to go through, turn that captured meeting productivity into a next step really effectively.
Right. I've got some questions that are flying into at the one time, literally.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
No worries.
It's popping up now to try GPT 5, Series 5 as an option on the screen. So Scott's asking, what is that all about? Like, do you know anything? Can you add any context around what that might mean? Is it better? Do we press it?
Yeah, so GPT
people.
So GPT-5 is just a new version of the technology underlying like the large language models that we were mentioning at the start. So it's just the newest version that's come through, where its sort of value proposition is that it is faster and more creative and able to get sort of more advanced features, or more, rather than sort of the earlier versions were quite mechanical in the way that it would speak back to you. It's started to get more expressive and creative in the way that it's able to interact back, which should feed through to the features that we're seeing within Copilot. But I think that'll take a bit of time there. So it is largely through the chat app that we're able to tap into GPT-5 to try and use that creativity. Some of the ways that people have sort of preferred ChatGPT versus Copilot over the past sort of 18 months is they say ChatGPT is more creative, which means it probably hallucinates more quickly, whereas Copilot was more built for a business environment, so probably a bit more conservative. So that GPT-5 leans into that creative side, but while still having that data protection and that robustness there. The insights have been, I'd probably suggest doing some testing. Some people have preferred it, some people haven't preferred it as well. So it seems to come down to the user at the end of the day. I would say that it's a new technology, so it hasn't been as heavily tested or refined as the incumbent models. So that's kind of like where my opinion is. That I've had some good experiences with it. I don't turn it on all the time. If it's kind of just more mechanical things I need to get done quickly, I just stick to the one that I know will get the more anticipated response. But yeah, I suggest just testing it out. There's nothing wrong with testing it out. Just go through those same checks and balances of verifying the work that you're working through and just seeing if you're happy with the responses and move back and forth. But that's definitely where the tide is going as far as the underlying tech. It'll keep evolving, keep maturing, and new versions will be coming out.
Yeah, okay, great. Isabella Lou has a question, and I think I just saw them re-enter the meeting, so maybe accidentally dropped off, but is back in time for this question from Isabella. Is the content summary from Teams accessible to all that are in attendance for that meeting? So can they get the meeting recaps just by being a participant in the team meeting?
So you will need to have a license. So the reason I say a license, not necessarily a Copilot license, is Copilot for Microsoft 365 licensed users will be able to access the summaries. So just by going into that meeting, looking at the recap. You can also get the recaps if you have a Teams Premium license. So Teams Premium is just for Teams. You'll be able to access some of the Copilot automatically built recaps, but you won't be able to interact with them personally. So say, for example, the demo where I went through, where I accessed the recap, you would need a paid license of Teams Premium or Copilot 365 to do that. But if you want to go through the process of interacting with that, turning it into an email, understanding the action items, different to what the automatic response was, that's where you need a Copilot license. But you need a paid license either way in order to get those recaps.
Great. One more question around the chat, around the GPT-5. Just wanting confirmation, Penny's asking to confirm that the security protocols remain in place if you do select GPT. So across the same Microsoft 365 version of Copilot, if you're selecting it, it's still staying safe.
Yep. So the same data governance guarantee is applied across the board. So Microsoft applies that to all of its AI technologies. Where they indicate it's different to some of the other guarantees is that the information that you're using in the prompts is not leaving your service boundary. So it's not leaving your M365 environment, even at the free level. So if you are using the free version of Copilot, that just makes sure that any of the information you're putting into that data, they're not taking any of that personal identifiable information back to Copilot at HQ in order to help do the calculations, do the computations. It's leaving that information in your service boundary, whereas that's not the same same value proposition from some of the other providers, particularly the other free ones on the market as well. So no risk from that front on using the GPT-5 version.
Okay, great. I think that answers Penny's questions, and that's all the questions we have at the moment. So I'll throw back to you.
Awesome. Well, I was just having a look at my notes of things to show. So that was really the crux I've wanted to show today. So whilst we've shown a few different scenarios across the M365 ecosystem, we've gone through how to use your inbox that's going to be in a more friendly way, how it's going to mine through a lot of information, how to get information from your inbox without necessarily going into Outlook as well. So it means you can start to digest it on the fly, also digest that information with, say, like different data from Teams meetings or different data from your M365 estate at the same time. But then you can also get a lot of these within the Outlook apps as well. So some of them are kind of the ones that Microsoft will have in their marketing materials, so the summarizing, the drafting, the creating. But definitely look at the things like the settings, because even though the first one we had out there was a little bit silly as far as the greeting and the structure, there is a lot of power within those settings to personalize these responses into how you want to communicate. And it doesn't necessarily just mean greeting and structure. You can put in tone of voice in there. You can put in, even if you just want to close things out, just with a famous quote, or however you want to sort of merchandise your emails. There's a lot of opportunity in there, I think, to get to that personalization stage, which I think a lot of users, from the feedback I've received, is where people are really excited to start working and making sure that they can get this application to really start to work for them rather.
Now's your time. What I am now showing on the screen is that we have a productivity center on our website, on the KMT website. So it's a really great place for you to visit. You'll see some prompting sheet, information sheets on there, some tools around the Microsoft 365 center. There's on-demand recordings in there from our recent workshops. There's a lot on there. We've really built that out to be a great resource center for you all. So if you want to get it directly to there, you can use that QR code. It is pretty easily navigatable via our website as well. So you'll find there everything relating to any of our past or even upcoming workshops that we've got. So there's also the ability there just to make sure that you're subscribed, so that we will reach out to you when we have any of our new workshops coming up in the future. But thank you for joining us. I think we'll wind it up here, and hopefully we'll see you on our next workshop in October around advanced Excel. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.